Looks like we're good to go. What's up, guys? Thanks for coming to this. Hope you're having a good summer. I'm Hardy Fowler, if we haven't met before, and today is going to be fun. We're going to do a tour of Concept Art Academy, just an info session for anyone who is
Looks like we're good to
considering.
go.
Oh,
What's up,
whoops.
guys? Thanks for coming to the.
Sorry, I had some echo there. So for anybody who's considering joining art mentorship, it's an investment of time and money. So I want to make sure everybody knows exactly what this program offers, what is expected of the artists who enroll. So if you have any questions or anything, we've got eyes on the chat. Celine is with me today to help relay questions. Thank you, Celine. And
Oh,
and after that, we've got a few submissions to the Discord of some paintovers that I'm going to do. I've been wanting to do this for a while, just sort of like a fix my painting style of workshop. I really enjoy that content, and I think it also gives a decent idea of what class is like in Concept Art Academy, because a lot of it is just sort of throwing work up for critique, discussing it, and showing cool little tricks. So a lot of this will be paintings that I picked, I'll fully admit, to like have the coolest quick impact. So there was like dozens of submissions, but I only grabbed a handful just for time, and also because I picked the ones that I wanted to make me look like a wizard the most, to make for a fun and cool live event. So that's the plan for today. We will also save for the end a really cool giveaway. So we have just about filled up our August session for Concept Art Academy. Not entirely, but we're ahead of schedule this year. We thought it would be cool to give away one of the remaining seats to an artist who has won a DPS monthly painting challenge in the last 12 months. So if you have won one of our monthly art contests in Discord, I have plugged your username into this Wheel of Fortune app, and we're going to spin the wheel at the end. So somebody who has won a challenge will be getting a entirely free ride to the academy if they're interested. And if not, or if you've some of the artists who are entered have already taken the academy, if you don't want to do it again, we'll talk. You could gift it to another artist, or we can figure out another cool prize of some kind. But should be fun. I will jump in and share my screen to get started. Okay, cool. Hopefully that is visible. All right, good deal. So, Concept Art Academy. It's a 12-week mentorship. We split it up into two main parts, which is a design module and a painting module. Kind of think of that as like the two pillars of a concept artist skill set. If you can do those two things well, your art will be valuable. You will be hireable. You will contribute to a team, to a project. And that's really the lens that all of this is created through, is making it very industry focused. There are so many beautiful portfolios on the internet, but many of them are beautiful, but not terribly purposeful, not very industry focused. So that is the critical missing piece that we really try to address for every artist who enrolls. How to make work that is valuable, that solves an art director's problems. That's what I think is that key decision that has to be made when your work gets picked for a job or a freelance gig or a studio position. What makes that art director or person who is hiring you decide on you is, can this artist solve my problems? Can they move my project along? So when sifting through dozens of other artists who want that job, if your work looks like it can do that, your odds of success go way up. And that's what everything is designed to do here. We start with the design module. This is actually where I think most of the very rapid improvement happens for the artists who I work with, because many of them show up and they can already paint quite well. They've got portfolios that have some pretty polished looking, nice looking stuff. So, what I often have to do is ask artists to kind of set all those skills aside, to sort of like dismantle their game and just trust me and start over just a little bit, because that was me. I learned to render first. That's sort of what first fascinated me with art, was how do I make something look real? I still find that incredibly cool and satisfying, but the switch from being that hobbyist artist to a professional all happened when I learned to design. I had to learn those skills second. It's sort of like I had the cart before the horse. And that's why we do these actually quite simple, fundamental shape design concepts. Academy alums, if you're in the chat, you guys know this is the HIMOBA core shape design principles. It's an acronym, but incredibly powerful stuff that, I don't know, do you ever notice somehow when you are drawing or designing something, it suddenly looks awesome, but you don't know why that happened, like lightning strikes? This sort of boils that down to a formula so that you can reliably and predictably do that when you need to, because that's what a professional has to do, right? Is sit down at your desk and just have awesome visuals on tap for your client. This is sort of how we turn that into a reliable and repeatable formula. And I love this. This is usually very eye-opening and really fun. So we drill those simple shape design concepts for the first 2 weeks. It's very basic. Our first design exercise is just designing a sheet of rocks, the most simple, mundane object possible. But when you're doing it armed with these core shape fundamental principles, they look awesome. They have personality. They look like they're designed deliberately by a professional. Always really cool. There are a bunch of exercises too to start making that like brain to hand connection. I'm a big believer in, you have to learn something for yourself for it to become your actual knowledge. You can be told something over and over again, but until you sort of wrestle with it and kind of come to it on your own, it doesn't become this power that you can summon. So, what I have set out to do is create situations where that happens for our artists, where you're sort of forced into these epiphanies about, oh, that's what they meant by that. It's sometimes something you heard years ago, but I want to take it from theory into something that lives in your stylus. So that's the early part of this. From there, we start applying these principles to a different project every week. And we've got something different. Like, all of this stuff is universal. So we tackle a wide variety of subjects. We do machines like guns and robots, we do environments, creatures, and finally characters, which is the hardest. We save the hardest for last, because anything involving people just adds a ton of complexity and baggage. But the stuff we learn in week one applies to this just as much as anything else. So that is the design module in a nutshell. From there, once you can design simply just with a sketch or a shape carving, make something that looks cool reliably, then we learn how to paint, how to polish, how to render something that looks realistic, that has style and brushiness and expressiveness, all of those cool things that makes art alive. So this is sort of the payoff. When I ask those artists to sort of set aside those rendering skills, this is when you get to come back, but you find everything is turbocharged from what you learned in the previous 6 weeks. Now, we do something similar. We start with concepts and theories. We do some exercises, And then we go into projects and start building portfolio pieces. Let me click into the exercise library because this is always a favorite in this part of the course. This is an encyclopedia of painting exercises on how to paint anything I could think of. I've added a few over the last couple of years, but it's pretty comprehensive. Everything from basics like value, color, and texture, brushstroke by brushstroke, into things like tech, machinery, glass, translucents. Basically, anything you're likely to encounter in a painting challenge, a concept art rendering you need to do. This is something you sort of keep on the shelf. Like, oh, wait, I have to render fur. There is something for that. I need to do a bunch of rocks and mountains. We have an exercise for that too. So artists tend to work through these at different paces. I usually tell people to kind of chill, not try to like burn through everyone in order, but just sort of have it on a shelf as you need it. Very cool and very useful. Kind of one of the uh, most popular enduring values of the curriculum. But from there, we tackle a different painting project and start portfolio building because that's what all of this is leading to for artists who are aspiring professionals is building that portfolio that will get your work noticed, that will launch a career. And I have lots to say about that. There's so much psychology and that goes into what makes a portfolio successful as a presentation, what makes it stand out in a crowded field. You know, how do you make your work look like you are the one out in that sea of art station gorgeousness? Um, I have a lot to offer on that. And for artists who get those early career bites, I'm still around as an advisor. I'm in touch with our alums all the time. Still, artists who took the curriculum years ago, we still keep in touch. Helped a few of my students from the last session this morning. So it's an ongoing support system. When I was trying to become a concept artist, I just didn't have anybody to tell me like what should I do. And that's what this is meant to be, is an ongoing support. You also have the really nice benefit of having a small group setting. I'm a big believer in that too. Having a one-on-one mentorship where you and I have a kind of artist and teacher relationship where we are in touch often, but also a small group who is there to support you, to keep you accountable. And just for company, I think learning alone kind of sucks. So having some artists who are in similar phases of their journey with art is really nice, and it just adds to the overall fun of it. It's also a really nice network. We've had artists who've gone on to get hired into a studio after graduation. The studio ended up needing another artist or two, and they come back and bring their friends with them. It happens. So there is a lot of tangible and intangible value here. But most of all, I think, is you're getting a teacher who is genuinely invested in your success. I take this very seriously, and I'm pretty good at it. I really want the artists who trust me to help them make their art better to succeed. And I take that really seriously. So that is basically the curriculum in a nutshell. And maybe I should have started with this, but let's check out our platform here. Concept Art Academy on our platform, we have it as kind of an all-in-one now. Not so long ago, we used to have Discord involved as like how I stayed in touch with the class. Now it's all within our platform. So we have a basically like mini Discord type of setup. And I don't want to click into these just because these are conversations from the last session and I want to keep that private for this class. But basically different channels We have direct messages between teachers and students. We have meetups where our weekly live classes take place and are recorded. In Concept Art Academy, we have a weekly live class every Thursday at 11 a.m. So one class per week. You're usually looking at around 5 hours of work per week between exercises and course projects. I think that'll vary. Some artists are like super go-getter and end up doing more than the, baseline that I ask for, and that's awesome. There are some artists who are like super motivated, but for the most part, if you're wondering what kind of a time commitment it is, I'd say about 5 hours a week, maybe an hour a weekday. It's nothing too hardcore. I would say I am a pretty chill but relatively tough love style of teacher. I am definitely not that hardcore, like break you into tears kind of teacher, is hopefully any alums in the chat will attest to. But I think it's a good blend of, you know, you have to call balls and strikes. If something isn't working, I'm going to tell you about it, but I'll always try to keep it constructive, always respectful. And I think we learn best when we are stoked about our work, when we're really like seeing success and keeping that momentum building. And that's my general style of teaching. I'm trying to think what else.
Well,
That
one thing
is a
that's kind of nice also about the having everything on the platform too is it's a bit more streamlined, so it kind of helps people get focused a bit more. And we actually have a question on that for you, Hardy, which might
yeah.
kind of lead to this. Someone says, there are times when I don't have or can't focus on drawing something. There are so many things that end up distracting me and making me lose focus easily. My question is, how do I stay focused?
I hear that, and you're not alone. That is sort of the artist's dilemma. I think you can tackle that in a few ways. It's probably different for different people. I find having a schedule that you can really stick to, like say 5 to 6 p.m. or whatever it might be for you, is just sacrosanct. Like that is your art time. It has to be something that the people in your life can respect and live with, family, significant other, or employer. It has to kind of fit within that. But that works for me. And actually, just as important is having times that are specifically not for art. I pretty much without exception don't do art on the weekend, so that is for family and for getting outside. So being pretty hardcore in your scheduling helps because when I try to approach these things casually, I tend to, you know, I'll do that someday. Never happens for me. I need to put it on the calendar and schedule it and stick to it, whether I really feel like it at that time or not. And after a while, that becomes a habit and becomes something that doesn't feel like a chore. That's a great question, though, and you're in good company there. I have to manage that with myself a lot. Um, just to dig deeper on that, as a professional, that becomes easier just because it's a whole different ballgame when you're being paid to do something and to deliver by a certain date. So I find just good old like deadline pressure kind of forces me into that. And now after like many years and many gray hairs after that, it's sort of just become a habit. So that's definitely a learnable skill. Good question. Uh, anything else at this time, Celine, or should I keep chugging?
The only thing I'd say is if you could make your screen just a little bit bigger, I can see some of your desktop, and then that way we can just if you go into drawing and stuff,
Yeah.
that way
Oh,
we
yeah.
can. Yeah, perfect. That's great.
Nice. I think that's kind of it for the like program tour that I wanted to get. If anybody has questions about cost or time commitment or anything like that, you can message me directly if we're connected on Discord. You can email office@digitalpaintingstudio.com and I'll get back to you because I want everybody to know exactly what you're getting for the time and money that's invested here. But otherwise, if anybody wants to grab a seat, we'll be sure to post links in the chat as well for the information page about the Academy or just the checkout link if you are ready. I promise this is not just a pressure sales tactic, but we're down to our last couple or few seats. So if you are thinking about it, I would definitely encourage you to grab those. If we're full, we'll just start waitlisting for the next one that'll start in November. So if it's not going to happen for you by August, no worries. We do 3 sessions of the Academy usually every year, and I'm pretty sure that's what we'll do next time. So that's kind of where we are. All right. And all right, here's our wheel we will come back to. I'm going to save that for the end just to build drama. Celine, as questions come in, just feel free to fire away, but I thought I'd get into the fun part of this. We'll kind of start digging into some paintovers. So there were so many cool submissions here, guys, but I grabbed a few that I thought I could like quickly make some changes to that would have a really dramatic effect. But it is not at all like a call on the quality or the artwork. I didn't just pick the ones that I found interesting. I thought this would make the coolest teachable moments because for each of these, I have like a quick trick that I think is going to dramatically add some punch to it. So this should be fun. But Celine, just as questions come, I can sort of paint and draw at the same time.
Cool.
Nice. Let's start with this one from Atari Re. Uh, really cool. And actually, what drew me to this one is the specific issue you were having with scale. That it was meant to feel super massive, but something about it was feeling small. And I totally agree with that. In fact, when I first saw it, I took it to be about the size of like I thought this was kind of like a hobbit residence, like a little doorway in the side of a little grassy hill with a walkway. But only when I zoomed in did I realize that this doorway is meant to be like 100 feet tall. It's in the side of a mountain, and this is a bridge. So I totally get that. We have a scale issue here. I think there are a few ways we could address that. First of all, there are a few things that you've done that are tricks that I really like, but I actually think worked against you here. The tree branch in the foreground, for example, I love that. So what this artist did was have a tree branch close to us that has this cool focal blur. That's really nice. It creates a sense of depth. It feels like this branch is close and all of this other stuff is farther away. It's that like lens effect. But what that also does is it brings us down to the ground. Like for a branch like this to be at eye level or wherever this camera might be, I guess if this is a pine tree, that would mean that this tree branch is somehow like, 1,000 feet in the air or however high our vantage point is. So if we wanted to really give it this very high up, very huge sense of scale, I would have done away with this. I would just kind of remove that. So maybe I'll just smudge this one out of existence a little bit. So there's that. The other thing that I think is a decision that is hurting the sense of scale is that we have a kind of limited space that we're looking at. It's all on one mountainside. We don't really have a sense of infinity or, there's no massive place that our eyes can kind of soar out to. So I was wondering how you felt about doing something like this, where we open this space up just a little bit to allow us to use other tricks that communicate depth and scale, like atmospheric perspective and other things, just to communicate hugeness. The one thing I don't like about this, or actually let's address that. I don't like how suddenly it makes this cave that this doorway is opening into smaller, but let me see what I can do there. We can start creating mountains upon mountains, kind of going off into the distance. And with atmospheric perspective, if we just make things lighter and lighter as they recede, it will give us that sense of a mountain range that's like disappearing into infinity. So just with those two minor things, I'm feeling the scale a little more easily and getting that epic hugeness that I love the concept. I mean, what is inside of there? Um, a massive doorway into a mountain, just really, that's some really great storytelling. Like, is it keeping something within? Is it some kind of a mountain keep, a fortress? It's cool. So a subtle but important point I wanted to make there, and certainly we would want to make our light sources match, like have these mountains have some lit surfaces. And I'm painting this really quickly just to make the point. You are very good at polish, and that kind of stuff would certainly belong in anything you put in the distance too. But I think that really helps make it feel big and also make the camera feel like it's dizzyingly high up in the air. I wanted to point out another concept art favorite, but birds. And these are really great. They add scale. They let us know that, something must be far away because we know the relative size of birds. So that, that lets our brain know that this thing must be far away because I know how big this is. I also love birds because if we have wings flapping up and down as you do, it kind of creates animation. It lets us see that movement. I can see this whole flock of birds kind of undulating. Really cool. So, quick trick, but I mostly wanted to just answer that question of why doesn't this look huge? And I hope that that helps with this. But very nice work. Let's jump to another one. Unless Selena, I can do a quick question break if anything else is coming in.
Tons of compliments on the painting itself, and just how
Okay.
it looks.
I will enjoy those later. Okay, let's see. I actually grabbed 3 environment and 1 character. Let's do this one by Chikoro. Super cool, right? Very atmospheric, and I it has kind of a Simon Stålenhag look that I really like. What drew me to this one is you're doing something I love with reflections in ground surfaces, but I thought we could punch that way up potentially. Um, I'm obsessed with this because you can actually do surprisingly little description of the actual ground in a lot of drawings. You can just let reflections do the heavy lifting. And I'm going to amp up what you already did here quite a bit. And these are very simple, very quick tricks that you can do. Okay, so let's basically mirror what is already there. Sometimes there's a little bit of perspective forcing that you have to do, kind of fudge it a little bit so that things will sort of add up. And we don't have to worry about this looking super exact or precise because I'm going to do some blurs and stuff to it. But that is about what we want. I basically want these tires meeting up. That's about right. Okay. So let's make a few copies of this. I'll do different levels of blurring because we're gonna reveal this in a few different ways. A motion blur is nice for this. Uh, if we have hung out at all, you probably know that Bob Ross looms large in my artistic influences. This is totally Bob Ross, like just sort of painting mountain reflections in a lake. That's basically all we're doing here. Don't laugh, Celine. I saw you.
I mean, I can't not.
I know.
So we always gotta bring up Bob Ross at some point. Actually, there's a question flowing in. I can
Is
ask
it
now.
is it Bob Ross related? No, just kidding.
I mean, you can relate everything back to Bob Ross, so maybe.
I'll give it my best shot.
All right. Someone says, how do you know when to end a project and move on? Or is it only a beginner issue when the process is yet to be figured out?
Such a good question. Um, so it gets easier with experience to answer the second one first. But I have a little habit with that that works well for me because you're right. It seems like you can always keep noodling with a piece of art forever, right? So when is it done? Like this thing's due tomorrow. I fight this in a few different ways. Like, first of all, when I finish something, I'm all excited about it and I want to share it or I want to send it to the client immediately, probably because I crave that, like, that validation that, the other eyes give your art. I mean, that's sort of what probably fuels a lot of artists on a base level is when they finish something, they want to show it to people, right? It's like your kindergarten, hey mom, check this out instinct. So I have to fight that because almost always when I finish something and I post it or I send it to the client, the next day I look at it again and it's like there's something I wish I had done differently or wish I had fixed, or even some like glaring mistake that it's like, how could I not see this? So when I am finished with something, I put it away for one day. I kind of force myself to not go out and seek that instant validation. And I come back tomorrow. And I almost always see something I wanted to fix. Now, if you come back tomorrow and it still looks awesome, good to go. But if you see things you want to keep working on, give it one more sitting, one more day, one more however long you're going to be at your desk. And then after that, close it up for good. I have to like set that 1 day limit for myself, or it's always in that maybe I should keep working on this. Like, when is it done? So that's what I do with that. You're totally right, though. Again, like things change a little when it's professional because if it's due, it's due. And you just sort of have to, I did my best. I solved the brief. And for the most part, your clients are going to be happy. And that's when you know that it's okay. But great question. When is anything done?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like sometimes I find I can't wear the two hats, like the analytical hat and the creative hat at the same time. Like it's almost impossible. So like choosing your battles of when to wear each hat so that you can continue the process and not halt it.
Great call. Absolutely. And right, it's sort of business person brain and artist brain are sort of at odds sometimes, but not always. Cool. That was a good one. I very much identify with the artists who asked that. Okay, let's get back to reflections. Basically, all I've done up to this point is flipped it, given it a vertical motion blur just a bit, and I'm setting this to soft light. And because this is a really warm image, there's kind of a little extra heat on this layer that I don't necessarily want. So I'm going to desaturate that just a touch with a hue saturation adjustment. Okay, so this is really subtle, but it's basically making all of this pavement look just a little bit wet, especially if I blur it even more or reduce the opacity even more. it actually, I like that a lot when it's barely there. It's cool. This is the Fresnel effect. If anybody is familiar with that, it's basically what governs the reflectivity of surfaces. And what's really interesting is that the closer to the horizon you're looking, the more reflective things seem. But if we were to turn our camera down and like look at our feet, this reflection, the reflectivity would be almost gone. In fact, in a lot of times I can feather this up so that the reflection's most prominent and then falls away as it goes kind of towards our camera feet. So that's very subtle. Actually, it's super subtle now that I've done that. Maybe let's bring it back a little bit. The next part is, I think, the fun part is let's actually add some puddles. Let's make it seem like this pavement actually is holding a little bit of standing water. So I saved a copy of this flipped reflection so that I could do this. I've masked it out again. And sorry if I'm flying through a lot of digital or Photoshop technicalities, but want to keep things moving pretty quickly. And then you can do this in a number of ways. We can grab a brush and just reveal it, and it's like we're painting puddles. That's really cool. I like to make it super random. So I have some custom shapes that I have made from photos over the years. This one, I'm pretty sure was from a photo of clouds, but I always use it for this because it has a nice kind of big shape that becomes smaller. So you know what? Let's flip that shape upside down. Now it looks like an oil slick or something. But I love how this shape kind of creates depth because of something called surface compression that we get into a lot in our environment projects. But let's stretch this a little, maybe blend out some of the edges. But what I'm going to do is use this shape by command clicking the thumbnail as a selection and then reveal it. Kind of cool. Not exactly what I was going for, but let's keep tinkering. But hopefully actually, that's kind of nice. That is the trick, is basically having different levels of reflectivity on a surface just adds all this dynamism. Um, and to this artist, I'm not sure if this is exactly the look you want. I'm not sure if it's what I would choose if this were my piece, but all of this is just meant to be like cool tricks to keep in your back pocket. Not tricks, but like techniques. I think an artist in a lot of ways is sort of a sum of the little pearls they have picked up over the years. That's sort of how I feel about my own stuff in a lot of ways, is every little new thing I have learned over the years and added to my toolkit, all of that sort of adds up to here's what I can do for you, client. That's not all that there is. A lot of it is, the more expressive part, the stuff that comes from you. But I do think that adds something. It's often nice too, because these large expanses of ground and pavement are often kind of a meh part of a painting. So this can very easily I haven't really painted anything. I've just sort of grabbed what's already there and and made it into something new. But I have used this so many times, like even on really complex things like this I did exactly that with this one. Just flipped the characters, flipped a little bit of the background, and did kind of two different types of reflectiveness, and it turned what was essentially just some texture and a few little stripes and lines to imply perspective into something that felt really finished. And that took half an hour tops. So that is a fun one to hang on to. Not perfect for every situation, but I like it here. Cool.
Someone's wondering if you could explain surface compression.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I have to save that one for Academy students because it's so powerful. In a in a the quick version is it's sort of like imagining what a shape looks like when you're looking down at your feet, which is sort of flat, versus what it looks like when it's out at the horizon, which is kind of flattened and squashed. So basically, if I'm running my hands over this imaginary three-dimensional surface, what do the shapes of my hands look like at each phase? Drawing shapes in that way really helps to create a sense of depth. And that works for the ground and it works for the sky, the shapes that we paint clouds with. It can really create a dizzying sense of depth just if we can like master that. But that is a really powerful one. Cool. Let's switch it up. Let's try a character. Miso. This is lovely. I really, really like this one because you're doing a lot of things that I really strive for, which is not over render. Like let things sort of be driven by shapes as much as possible. The flowing hair, the highlight of the drapery, kind of in shadow and in highlight, that sort of, the shape of the highlight of the face that that drives the entire image. All of these awesome interweaving curls of hair. The shapes are what makes this read as hair. But what you didn't do, and what I think is awesome, is you didn't brush every strand of hair. It's essentially just a shadow shape and a highlight shape. I think that is mastery. Uh, there's definitely other ways we can polish and finesse that, but as an approach, I think that's awesome. That's the 50s illustrator Leyendecker, I think, sort of made that famous, where he just has like a dark shape of hair with his brush, and then he would just paint a highlight and kind of feather the two. And it looked perfectly like hair with sort of two brush strokes. So awesome. I don't have much to add there. What made me want to grab this one is that it is set up so beautifully for my favorite thing, which is edge lights, just instant drama. Actually, I'm pretty sure um, the image on my desktop really features this perfectly, but I I thought this would really help punch this one up. And light can tell such a story that I think it really fits with this too. She looks kind of, I don't know, it reminds me of like a Renaissance painting of like a child or a cherub looking heavenward or something. She looks kind of um I don't know, afraid or hopeful or something. Actually, what I really love is that I don't know for sure. That's also a really masterful thing to strive for, is letting your viewer project into your paintings, not having everything so spelled out and on the nose that it just is sort of conclusive. I feel like this one is left nicely open-ended. I'm not super sure if she's afraid or hopeful or in despair or what. And I find that really cool. Like that's what makes your viewer want to sit with this for a second and contemplate it and think about, a memory that this evokes for them. Or maybe this person looks like somebody they knew when they were a kid, or, when we can, that's what engaging art is, I think. make them stop and take a second in this world that you've made and see how cool it is. Really cool. What I also love about your painting as it was before I touched it, but also what edge lights add is that it makes it read from far away. So sad reality for artists in 2024 and beyond is that most of the time your artwork gets interacted with, people are seeing it as a thumbnail or something this big. And it has to be able to read and engage at that size if anybody's ever going to like click in and really dig in and actually enjoy all of these beautiful details that you've added. So edge lights and in general that shape first painting style that I talked about, that really does a great job of that because our eyes, we key into shapes like immediately. You know, it's why you can recognize a silhouette in the dark. There's science about how your eyes work that back that up. But shape, letting shapes do the heavy lifting in your art always seems to lead to a result that is pleasing, that is an easy read, that is effective. I could keep going. We could certainly, we would want to be consistent with the lighting and how it's affecting other parts. I guess technically, if we decide to bring this into the hair, it is kind of adding a third light source a little bit, but I think that's okay. Um, the edge light can also be a really a story driver that I really like. Sometimes if we just light something flatly, it's kind of just like it's there and okay, so what? Even if you've done a really nice job rendering and it looks all three-dimensional, it sort of feels like a so what sometimes. But if we add some really intense secondary light source after we've described all of these forms really beautifully, suddenly something is happening. Like, I guess I keep feeling like Renaissance painting with this one, but it's like the clouds are parting, right? The ray of light from heaven is shining down. Um, there is this dragon I did last summer for YouTube, but my favorite part of this painting is just the very end when I kind of darken the whole thing and just carve this beam of light out. It's sort of like he's stepping out from the shadows. So using value in light, not just as a way to describe three-dimensional forms, but as a storyteller or a way to lead focus. That's kind of um, that higher level of, what are we trying to tell our viewer? What are we, what feeling are we trying to evoke in the people who see our stuff? And that's pretty powerful.
It really
Um,
draws my eye to her face now, too. I
cool.
know.
It's such a nicely drawn face that it's sort of just, I think, backs up what is already working there. Um, Another happy side effect is that it instantly makes things look more finished than they might otherwise. So I have gotten so used to like planning on adding this step that I kind of stop detailing a lot of things because I know I'm just going to cover it up. And it's helped me be faster and more efficient. So certainly we would want to throttle this a little bit, and masks are awesome for that. But that's what just jumped out at me when I saw this one. But again, beautiful work. And the composition's really nice. I love how she's kind of in a corner, but the action line is moving to the opposite side. It's just very dynamic. And I like rabbits. So sold. Really cool. Nice. Any questions, Celine? I'm kind of trying to pause between paintings just to
Yeah,
open it up.
nothing coming through at the moment. I know it's about 10 to, I don't know how we are for time, but there's also the draw as well, so.
Yes. I wanted to do one more, and I think we have time for both. I think the draw will not take long. Just a
Cool.
spin of the wheel. Just going to build suspense a little while longer. Bibson, I really love this. I mean, so cool. It's like a little troll village or something. One thing I wasn't sure about this is if you intended for our people here to be very small or not. Um, I wasn't sure. I guess it's this hollow log made me think that, we're like trolls sized people. If you wanted to do that, I would just had some more like scale signifiers like mushrooms or a large leaf in the foreground. If that wasn't your intention, that is also cool. I think what led me to think about this is this feels so mushroom-like on this tree slash building that it gave me that vibe. So I guess I would, if whatever your intent is with the scale, I would be really deliberate about that and really nail that down with a few other details. Again, I grabbed this one because it has something that I really like, but also something that I think we can push a little bit farther. And that is your use of light. Basically, this scene is cut really nicely into two main zones. It's kind of our foreground, this framing element, and that feels like where we are as the viewer. We're kind of sitting in this darker spot. But then it opens up into this nice lit glade, like an opening. That's always a really nice little visual moment you can create when you're in somewhere that's crowded and dense, like a forest, and sort of looking out into a clearing, because it's a narrative, and you've even got the person who is sort of us as the viewer here. We're sort of stepping out into something. That's dynamism, right?